So we are live. Good afternoon, everyone, for joining. Very good afternoon. Okay, we'll wait for another 30 seconds, I think so, and then we will start with our webinar, YouTube live session, basically. Good morning, everyone. So as usual, I will announce the name of the first one who have commented. Bashanti Shri. Bashanti Shri, ma'am, was the first one to connect at 2:50, I think so. Good afternoon, ma'am. Then this digital philosophy zone. Okay, good afternoon. Abhishek Chaudhary, research scholar from University of Gorgon. Okay, welcome. Welcome everyone from University of Gorgon. Good afternoon, DJ PBM. Good afternoon, Deepa Chauhan, ma'am. Yeah, and so on. We have a lot of good afternoons. I think all the good afternoons are displayed on the screen. Very good afternoon, everyone. Very good afternoon. With this, we will start with our webinar. I think maximum participants have joined, and a few of them will join later. And as this is a YouTube live session, so participants can go watch again on YouTube, as this webinar will be there on YouTube as usual. Psychology is now psychology. This is webinar number 52. Okay, there's some correction in banner, I think so. This is webinar number 52 by PsyCoolG Connect, an initiative by PsyCoolG Wellness Private Limited, an ISO certified and registered organization working to spread awareness. Our motto is to remove the stigma from the society which is connected to mental health. And the only key, the only way to remove the stigma, we believe it's awareness. And for that, we have started this series of mental health awareness for free for you all. Definitely, you can come on YouTube and watch our free sessions. If you have missed any of the sessions, you can go subscribe our channel and you can find the link below there in the description box. And you can subscribe the channel and you can view all the previous webinars also. By awareness, we can remove the stigma. We believe in that. Another thing, the feedback link for the webinars are present in the description box. If you want to give your feedback, we respect each and every feedback, whether negative or positive. We welcome each and every feedback and we review them personally. Other than this, the certification link is also mentioned in the description box. If anybody wants to opt for certification, they can go in the description box, click on the link, fill the form correctly, and then opt for the certification. Hence, the certification is paid. With this, we will start with our webinar number 52. Our resource person of the day is Ma'am Dr. Jeny. So the brief introduction will be given by Ma'am Garima. The topic for the day is process of learning. and we will start with the webinar within 15 seconds. I think most of us have joined. Okay, so Deepa Chauhan ma'am's comment, I think so I should highlight that. And as you all can see on the screen, Deepa Chauhan ma'am's comment, congratulations psychology team for webinar number 52. You people never stop. Doesn't matter it's Sunday or national holiday. Good girl. Yeah, actually, Sundays and holidays are the opportunities to learn. And I think that when the people are free from all other things, they can learn better. And even the resource person will be free for that day particularly. I think so. And that would be the great day to learn and to share the knowledge. Yeah, Deepa Chauhan, ma'am, I think you got your answer. And thank you. Thank you for your lovely comment. Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, okay, so we will start. I would request Garima ma'am to take the mic.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And good afternoon, everyone. I welcome everyone in this webinar organized by PsyCoolG Connect. As Dinesh sir said, it is our 52 webinar. And I welcome everyone in this webinar. And our topic for today is process of learning, role of metacognition and self-regulation. What is the role of metacognition and self-regulation in learning? And our speaker for today is Dr. Jeny. She is an educator and psychologist with an experience of 20 years in teaching and 8 years in counseling. She has published more than 25 research papers, and her 55 research articles have been published in various magazines circulated all over India and outside India as well. And she has attended many national and international conferences and workshops. And with it, I would like to hand over the mic to ma'am. Ma'am, please, you can start the webinar.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Garima. A warm welcome to all the participants in this webinar and good evening to all. And my heartfelt thanks to this psychology organization, PsyCoolG organization, for giving me an opportunity to speak from this platform because they are doing a great job. Because I got wondered when I heard that this is the 52th webinar, and we must appreciate their effort definitely, and they are doing a great job. And I feel proud to be here in this platform to speak about today's topic. So today's topic is about learning, process of learning, and the role of metacognition and this self-regulation in learning. In the beginning, from the beginning itself, I am saying, I am telling to the participants here, audience here, that if there are any teachers, if there are any students, and if there are any parents, please listen. That this webinar is not will not help you to score high marks from the first session itself. I must just tell you that this will not be helping you to score high marks. But this webinar or this attempt, this humble attempt, is a sincere attempt from my side to bring your attention into the process of learning. That is the underlying philosophy of metacognition and self-regulation is that when you are flawless in your process of learning, if your process of learning is error free, your academic performance, your scores and grades that you score will be a natural consequence of it. So this research people or proponents of this metacognition and self-regulation are inviting the students to, to turn your attention towards the process of learning and try to make it better. Then outcome of the learning will be improved automatically. So let us enter into the presentation. Pay attention to the things that I am presenting here, and I will be explaining the objective of the webinar and what you are going to get from this webinar. how it is going to help your learning process. Everything will be explained here. Stay with us till the end of this webinar. Then only you can benefit from this presentation. Let me start sharing the screen of this presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely. After completing the full webinar, then only people can understand the basic concepts of the topic.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's why I
So
am asking them to stay
I
in the
request all the
webinar.
participants to stay till the last so that you can understand the topic well. We will be there with you, and
Okay.
you can comment down your views in the comment box. We are watching each
Yes,
and every comment. Yes, ma'am, you can
sure.
start.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, self-regulation and metacognition in learning. What we are going to learn from this session. These are the goals of this webinar. That is, I will be defining the concept of metacognition and self-regulation in a language that is much understandable for you. You can easily understand what is metacognition and self-regulation. And I will be explaining why this is important for student success, and what are the effective strategies I will be putting forward to pick up effective strategies for implementing metacognition and self-regulation in your learning scenario. Before entering into the main focus of the discussion, let us think what is actually learning. What is the philosophy of learning that this science of metacognition and self-regulation is depending in order to enter into the learning process? There are some underlying assumptions regarding the learning for this science of metacognition and self-regulation, or technique of metacognition and self-regulation. The first one is learning is not easy, because learning is something that happen, something that should happen with some effort and discipline. Never consider learning is an easy process. Of course, there is joy of learning is there, but that joy of learning has to be discovered by the learner. It is not as the joy that you experience while you watching the film or watching a sports event. It is not like that. Joy of learning is different. That is deserving student get. And reflection is an indispensable part of the learning. That is, only through the reflection you realize the kind of effort that you invested behind your successes, and the reasons or the causes that led to your failures. You can approach your performance only with the help of the right kind of reflection. And after, when you engage in the act of reflection about your learning process, you will be getting some insights regarding your own learning process. This was right, that was wrong, like that. And after reflection, acting on reflection is a part of effective learning process. And the next is, without failure, nobody can learn anything. That is, failure is an integral part of learning process. Admit it. Only through the failure you can know about success. And you must be able to deal with the differences that you feel between your experience of learning and the ideal learning process. When you are seeking for a good learning process or good learning strategies, always there will be a feeling of difference between the way in which you learn and the ideal way of learning. There will be a difference. It will create some kind of tension in you, and you must be able to deal with it. And a good learner approaches his learning process with questions. A good learner keep on questioning the adequacy or efficacy of his learning strategies, his likes, dislikes, his beliefs about learning, performance. all that. You must be capable of asking questions. All these things are essential to become a good learner. So this presentation, I am saying to the students present here, this presentation is not for the students who love quick fixes. So many students are searching for quick fixes because this era of technology has left some culture among us that we can do things very quickly. That is with the touch of our finger on some buttons or on our screen, mobile screen. We can do many tasks in our life quickly. And many students expect that learning also can take place in a fashion of quick fix with the help of quick fixes. And there are students who think that learning is for passing examination. No, actually, learning is not for passing the examination. It is one of the goals of the learning, that is passing the examination. Beyond that, there are many goals for becoming a learner, a good learner. That is, learning is intended for your growth and development along many dimensions. That is, intellectually, you must grow and develop socially and emotionally and even spiritually. You will be growing and developing with the help of the learning, only with the help of the learning. That is the purpose of, that is all individual development is the purpose of, actual purpose of learning. It is not passing the examination only. So there are students who prefer crash courses in order to crack the examination. This presentation is not for them. Knowledge about metacognition and self-revelation is not for such students. There is a new culture prevailing among Indian students that many of them depend on crash courses in order just for cracking the examination, just to pass through the examination. But learning is not taking place there actually. Because what is the definition of the learning? We can say that an individual or a student has learned properly whenever there is some perceivable change in the personal behavior of the individual. In the personality of the individual, there should be some visible changes, which is more or less permanent. What happens to the student who attend crash courses? This change does not happen actually. So systematic disciplined learning, this presentation is for the students who love systematic disciplined learning, who believe in disciplined learning. So let me tell the facts in the beginning itself. So this presentation or this session, this webinar is for the student who wanted to know about the process of learning. Learning is actually a process. And he must be ready to know, if he is ready to know what is the process of learning. As any process, for example, take a process, for a simple process, driving, take it. The process of driving, in order to happen, it must go through some this sequential logical step. Driver has to enter into his cabin and put the key in the right place and this regulate this or arrange gear, the position of the gear, and search for the accelerator and control. So such a definite steps are there, sequential logical step, one must go after other. If anything of this process is going to miss, driving will not happen. In the same way, this learning process has some logical sequential steps or stages to be taken place in order to be effective. You will get what is it from this presentation. Now, that this presentation is for the student who want to improve his performance by probing into his learning process. The student who wants to improve his performance may attend tuition classes or start blaming the class the teacher is taking, or he may start blaming or finding fault with his learning atmosphere, all that. But actually, the kind of the student who wanted to improve his learning process, not outcome. Outcome is a final thing, but you just invest your effort and energy in improving the process by probing into the adequacy, efficacy of that process that you are following at present. This is the the students with this mindset is going to benefit from this presentation actually, because there are students, a lot many students think about learning in a bidirectional way, or in binary way, I will say. That is, binary means 0 and 1. Binary digits are 0 and 1. Either it is yes, it is otherwise it is no. This is a binary way of thinking. That is, learning either happens or does not happen. This is a thought in the minds of the students about the learning. Either it happens or it does not. If it is not happening to a particular student, what is his or her conclusion? It is the instructor's fault, or they are born with that intellectual capacity to perform well in the examination. These are the common conclusions students make about learning. And they don't know what is the process of learning, what is the science of learning. Learning is becoming a science, and there are many facts associated with learning. Students must be familiar with it in order to improve their learning. And here it is. He who learns but does not think about his learning process, about his learning goals, about the effectiveness of the strategies he is using, and why he is learning, what for, what are the goals of his learning. The student who fails to think in terms of this is going to lose. This is a Chinese proverb, and it is very much applicable in this context, actually. And the question is thinking. You have to think. No, you must learn to think. A student who learns but does not think. So the question is, what is thinking? What is thinking actually? What is meant by thinking? Students are having, if you ask a group of students, or even to your child, you just ask how you experience your thinking, or what are your conclusions about your thinking process. There will be a lot of misunderstanding from the part of the students about what they think about this human capability called thinking. There are so many misconceptions. That most of the students, 99% of the students, think that thinking is like breathing or heartbeat. Means it takes place automatically. It comes and goes. It keep on. They have no control over it. They are controlled by their thoughts, in other words. That is, their behaviors, thoughts, emotions, everything is controlled by these thinking, their thinking process. They have no control. But it is absolutely false. This concept about your own thinking is absolutely false. Thinking is a skill. It is a skill. Thinking skill is that can be learned, practiced, developed, and improved. Where is the proof for this statement? I am asking. I am just saying that thinking is a skill that can be learned, practiced, developed, improved, and all that. What is the proof of it? Proof is, I will be pointing out just one thing. That is, best proof for this statement is there is in the medical field itself, in the field of psychology. All of you must have heard about the cognitive behavior therapy. Many psychological ailments are getting healed by this therapy. This therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, is most prevalent and popular among the individuals who are suffering from mental health issues. And what is the basic idea of cognitive behavior therapy? What is it? It is the restructuring of your cognitions, restructuring of your thinking pattern, thinking style. We are changing it with the help of this therapy. And researchers keep on proving repeatedly that it is possible to change your thinking style, thinking pattern, and take control of your thinking process. So, thinking skill that we what we call as thinking skill that you will not get by birth. Intelligence intelligence is not equivalent to your thinking skill. Intelligence is some other concept altogether. It represents a host of your skills or faculties of your brain, actually, intelligence. And all the brilliant students in your class, whether you are in a college or you are in a school, wherever it may be, all the brilliant students whom you think that top scorers in your class need not have this thinking skill. Actually, it is a fact. He will be scoring high grades and high marks, but this skill need not be there. And gathering a lots of information, you can gather a lots of information and mug it in your head. That does not mean that you have this skill called thinking skill, because thinking skill involves finding out the several connections between different informations, your ability to use in appropriate situations, apply your information. All these are involved in thinking skill. So if you have so many information in your head, that doesn't mean that you have thinking skill. And somebody will be a good speaker in your class, you can notice that they respond very promptly and they make so much noises. That does not mean that they have this skill called thinking skill. Usually the persons who have this thinking skill, who know how to think, usually keep calm and quiet. So this is the simplest definition. So you must properly know to think about thinking. This is the one word. This is the simplest definition of metacognition. Your ability to think about your own thinking, your own thinking style, your own thinking process, your own decisions based on your thinking, your behaviors based on your thinking. So in the context, actually, metacognition is a not a thing that is applicable only in the context of learning. Metacognition you can apply in several areas in your life in order to develop your performance in any area. Even common life situations, metacognition is very much applicable, and you can raise the quality of your life itself. But in the context of learning, what is metacognition? We are coming to that point. That is, it is not learning about how other people learn. You leave it. How other people are learning or learning theories are there. That also you leave. It is not about it. Metacognition. It is about developing an awareness. Most students are not aware of their own learning process. You are by taking this skill called metacognition, you will be first stage of this metacognitive skill is you develop some kind of awareness of the learning process that you are going through. And you start monitoring and assessing your own learning process in each stage of your learning. And also make adjustments to learning process. Whenever adjustment is needed, you make this adjustment. And you learn to manage your motivation and attitudes with the help of metacognitive skills. And one more thing is metacognition involves reflection. What is reflection actually? Reflection, I will say, it is an act of probing into thing or entering into an event or confronting an event with some questions in our mind. That is, we are trying to answer those questions in an attempt to understand the underlying facts and theories and things that happened there. Either we will be reflecting the past event or we will be reflecting about the things happening at the present. Reflection is approaching the events and situations with a bunch of questions and trying to reach at satisfactory answers for this question. For example, a student is given a difficult problem. Suppose a student who has learned metacognitive skills, suppose he know what is metacognitive skills, applies this act of reflection in his solving the problem. He will be approaching the problem with some questioning mind. What kind of problem is this? What is the best strategy for solving it? He will be thinking. And how will I know I solved it correctly? Suppose he solved it. How can he know the answer is correct or not? He has to check or ask somebody's help whether the answer is correct. And suppose his answer is wrong. The way he solved the problem is wrong. Suppose there are two kinds of students. Some students think that I have no mathematical ability, I am not prepared well, I am not for this kind of learning. Students conclude like that. But a student who has practiced reflection or metacognitive skill involves reflection. A student who has practiced this reflection, the habit of reflection, enter into these questions. How could I do it better next time? I'm wrong. My answer is wrong. So what is additional information do I need to solve this problem? This will be the question. And he will be asking, what is the use of learning or solving this problem, learning to solve such problems? How can I use my understanding regarding the solution of the problem in similar problems? And this is one of the examples of how the student approaches a learning situation with a reflective mind in his mindset itself. So there are some challenges involved in the classroom and even the home itself. Parents and teachers must notice, if you wanted to raise your child with some metacognitive skills, or if you wanted to improve the learning process of your child, parents and teachers must know that we must be able to inculcate some self-imposed internal conversation. Students are very well versed in making conversation with other people, but they are not aware that a kind of internal conversation is needed about their learning processes and strategies in order to improve their learning. We must be able to lead them to this state, making internal conversations about their choices, preferences, likes and dislikes regarding learning. Until now, the scientists and educators believed that almost all students, as they grow up, they pick up this quality of making internal conversation with their study habits and styles. They will be asking why I am not studying, or why I am not getting proper marks. But it is not that. Only you give proper guidance from the lower classes itself, they will pick up this habit of making internal conversation with their learning strategies and learning habits. So the most important challenge that teachers and parents face is to keep the student in the metacognitive process. It is not so easy to initiate a child into this metacognitive process and self-regulating capacities. But once the child tastes the effect or fruit of this way of thinking or learning, metacognition, and once they start appreciating metacognition and self-regulation, you can see that it becomes a part of their life. Metacognition, it becomes a style of their life actually. And I repeat, you need not to worry. There are some things that you have to worry if you want to develop your metacognition skills. What are they? Don't worry about how other people learn. Stop worrying for the time being how others are learning. And I repeat the same, Develop awareness of your own learning process. Turn inward. Ask yourself. Make internal conversations. Start monitoring and assessing your own learning process. And get ready to make necessary adjustments and manage your motivations and attitudes. Means recognize the times or situations where when your motivation is low, or events that reduce your motivations. Recognize it, becoming aware of it, your mental states. This process is involved in metacognition. So in order to understand metacognition properly, you must be able to distinguish between cognition and metacognition. There is a higher chance for misunderstanding between two. What is cognition and what is metacognition? Cognition can be termed as thinking. All the thinking process can come under this cognition. But metacognition, it is thinking about thinking. Thinking about thinking. Let us look. Information gathering, it is a cognitive process. It comes under cognitive process. You are gathering information. It is a cognitive process. Memorization, you memorize the things. It is a cognitive process. Understanding the things that you learned. You are trying to understand the meaning of meaning of the things that you learned or read. It is a cognitive process. And you apply the things that you learned. Again, it's a cognitive process. And even if you are developing your information or understanding about a thing or about a matter, about a content, it is also a cognitive process. Cognition. It comes, all these things comes under cognition. Then you will be asking, what is metacognition? Let me explain, taking one among this list. Suppose memorization. You start to memorize something, a poem, a student started to memorize. When the teacher asked, he couldn't take it from the memory. Teacher told the student that you just recite the poem. Student couldn't recite it. He has learned it the previous day or 2 days before. He has prepared it, went through the poem and reread it, tried to recall it, everything he has done. But he can't memorize the poem when the teacher asked. Then he says to himself, my memory is weak. My memory is weak. But my memory is weak. This is a knowledge about your cognition called memorization. It is your knowledge about your cognition. My memory is weak. But a student who knows about the metacognition will not approach this situation in the same way. He will be approaching the situation in a different way. He will be thinking. He could not reproduce the poem, but he will be thinking, what I did to learn this? What are the proper memorizing? What are the strategies for improving the memories? What all strategies I used? Whether the strategies I used or applied were appropriate, were they proper, and whether there are any methods to depend in order to improve my memory, whom I should approach to get the advice. Or the thoughts will be going like this for a student who have known the effect or importance of metacognition in learning. This is applicable to all individuals who are learning anything, irrespective of their age. So metacognition knowledge is this. Knowledge about your cognition, knowledge about your information processing, knowledge about your understanding. It is weak, either weak or strong. It is only metacognitive knowledge. But when you apply that knowledge for the improvement, to ensure that you have a goal, you wanted to take out the poem from your head when your teacher asks. That is your goal. And you use the knowledge about your memory in order to improve the memory. You ask questions, what is the method, what strategy I should use. This is actual metacognition, because just knowledge about one's cognitive strength or weakness, it is not metacognition. Metacognition is you keep on thinking about your cognitions. So what is it? There is a knowledge of your cognition. Metacognition has two parts actually. There is knowledge of your cognition as well as your capacity to regulate those cognition is there. Knowledge of cognition means knowledge about yourself as a learner. My memory is weak. My ability to process the information is good. And if I do so, I can learn better. That is your knowledge. And you must be having knowledge about strategies and procedures that can be used, applied. You must have some knowledge. And not only that, why and when to use the strategy, particular strategy. For example, all the subject can be learned. Never think that all the subject can be learned using the same strategy. For example, you can learn mathematics if you want to take up some skills of problem solving in mathematics. You have to work out, you have to do problem, you have to enter into problem solving bouts. I mean, you have to go through as many problems as possible. Then only you can pick up the skill. But in order to learn a poem, as I said before, just reading and rereading and recalling and understanding the meaning of the poem, that is a strategy. So student must have the knowledge about the cognition. What is the right kind of strategy? Why and when I use it, I should use it. And also there are regulation skills. They must be able to plan it, select the appropriate strategy, allocation of resources like time, energy, money. Student must know that. And monitoring is an important thing. We will be explaining about it later. And developing constantly in the process of learning is also important. So most of the students, even if they have knowledge, this knowledge about the metacognitive knowledge becomes metacognitive skill only if they enter into an application of their knowledge. They experiment with it with the help of probing into their learning process. So there will be always a gap between knowledge, metacognitive knowledge, and metacognitive skill. We must know that. So if you wanted to take your student or child through the development of metacognition, you can closely observe your child is going through 5 phases or 5 stages. That is, first stage of development of metacognition is awareness of, or acknowledge or agrees that learning is a process. Process begins from at a particular time and place. A process. This is the characteristics of a process. It begins from there is a beginning point to it, and there is a final point. And the final point is the goal of learning. So, student get ready to acknowledge the learning as a process in the first stage, and in the second stage, there will be a tension in the mind of the student that he or she will be following some learning process or learning strategies, but it will not be finding adequate output or getting into expected result. So there is some ideal way of learning. That is tension between ideal experience of learning and actual experience of learning. Students' experience of learning must merge into ideal experience of learning. Then only the goal of learning can be met. So until this merging of these two experiences, students' experience and ideal experience happens, there will be some tension. Student will be probing into the right kind of learning process. Will be the second stage. And in order to overcome tension, the student will be experimenting with the different strategies. He will be making so many plans. There will be reshaping of the plans, or restructuring of the plans, strategies, refreshing of the plans. He experimented with the strategies in learning, which is going to be work, which is going to make effect, or which is going to bring forth desired result. And this phase is very important. The fourth phase. In this phase, metacognitive skill becomes start manifesting. That is, student assumes an enquiry stance. The success of metacognition lies here. Student learns to question his own learning process. There is an enquiry stance about his own plans and strategies. He starts asking questions whether I have reached the desired goal. And if not, I have not performed as expected. What I can do further. This is a kind of way of thinking that we introduce in the head or instill in the mind of the student. That is, in this phase, student asks questions to himself actually. What worked? What didn't work? How do I know that it worked? What it was expected? How it was expected to perform well? Do you think it will work again next time? And what evidence have you got? All these questions, student will not start asking to himself, but parents and teachers start asking these questions to the students. It must make a habit, helping the students or involving in the educational activities of your child must be done with the help of the questions like this. That will lead him into a metacognitive process, or he will become more and more aware of the learning process that he is doing. So these questions parents can ask, and after some time, after some years, you keep on helping him to ask himself about the questions. What happens is, before learning and after learning, he will make it a habit to ask questions about the appropriateness of his learning. And in the fifth stage, what happens, the final stage of metacognition, what happens is, student makes theories about learning. That is, if I learn in such and such way, if I use such and such strategies, if I manage my resources like time, money, and all that in such and such ways, I can perform well. This is his own theory he makes. It is different from it is not related to any classical conditioning theories or Skinner's reinforcement theory of learning. No, it has nothing to do with this theory of learning. This theory of learning is something that a student formulates about his own learning process, and it is unique to him. It is applicable only to the student. It cannot be applicable to some other student. So it is a lonely journey actually. And these are the two indispensables or important part of developing metacognition in learning. One is looking forward. It is strategics. That is, it is related to the strategy you apply. Looking forward is happening with a bunch of questions like this. How could I learn it? You think when a student is sitting in front of his study table and there is a physics textbook in front of him, and he asking, how can I learn it? What strategy I must use? What I am supposed to get or reach by learning this? What strategies could I use? What knowledge, skills, could apply? When answering the question, there is a strategic way of thinking is there in metacognition. And other is reflective. It is far more important than strategic. Means Even if there are some errors in strategic way of thinking, it can be remedied by reflective way of thinking. That is, this thinking will go like this. How did I learn it? How did I learn it? What process did I use? Whether it was successful, why it was not successful, what was not successful, and what knowledge and skill have I achieved. This teachers and parents can start asking these questions in the beginning, and in the long run students themselves will take up these questions. And this is about metacognition. Now let us enter into self-regulation, that is reflective and strategist thinking. Actually, self-regulation is a consequence of metacognition. A student who learns metacognitive strategies and skills naturally, or it is a natural consequence, I will say, that is, student who picks up the skill of metacognition naturally end up in self-regulation in learning. This is a definition of self-regulation. You must go through it very attentively. That is, it is a process actually. Self-regulation is a product. It's not a product. It is a process. Continuous process maybe. Process which the student used to activate and sustain. There are two parts of the self-regulation. Two important thing in the self-regulation. That is, student is, with the help of self-regulation process, student can activate and sustain what he has activated. He can activate and sustain his thoughts around learning. He can activate and sustain his behaviors around learning. He can activate and sustain his emotions, his motivation, his energies around the act of learning. This is a complete definition of self-regulation. And never think that it is a mental ability. It is not a mental ability. It is not an inherited thing. It is not an academic skill. Even the student who performs well, the student who scores high marks in your class, need not have this self-regulation in learning. Yes, it is a fact. And it is actually, this self-regulation is a self-directive process. You learn to direct yourself, self-directive process. And when a student practices himself in self-regulation, what happens is there will occur some kind of transformation. Transformation of what? His innate mental abilities. Every student, each and every student will be having some mental abilities. The problem is those mental abilities are not getting transformed into academic skills. You can see many students in your class that they have adequate intellectual capacity, memory capacity is there. All these are their mental abilities. It is not adequately getting transformed into academic performance. What is the reason? If you teach your students in this skill, that is self-regulation skill, I promise that even the low student who performs very, very low in your class, after 2 or 3 months, definitely will develop in his academic performance. It's a fact. So what is self-regulation? What it includes? It is actually a cycle. What is the nature of a cycle? Can you anybody say what is the nature of a cycle? A cycle, it never ends. It goes and goes in circles actually. Self-regulation, cycle. So what are the parts of the cycle? There are 4 phases of the cycle. 4 thought phase, monitoring phase, regulation phase, and reflection phase is there. Let me explain one at a time. Then you will get idea what is. This is a first phase. That is forethought phase. Means this phase happens just before the learning. And the main thing happens here, this before the learning, just before the student enter into the learning process. Students think about what they know and what they need to know. they come to understand this thinking strategy. We must train the students in it. That is before sitting learning. You must advise the student. They must probe into this. That is what they know, what they need to know. What are the goals that you have to they reach at by learning a particular chapter of physics, a particular content. When the student sit for learning a chapter from mathematics, student must ask himself, what are the objectives of this session, this chapter? What this chapter expect from me? What kind of goals I am supposed to reach at by learning this chapter or this material? Student must be able to ask himself, and he must be able to plan. Plan means he must chalk out what are the appropriate strategies for this learning. He must confront the content. What are the appropriate suitable strategies? And he must set a goal within this time frame. And I must be able to learn this. And the second is monitoring. That is, student must constantly monitor his learning process. And it is a very, very important factor which help the students to pick up the skill of regulation in learning, self-regulation in learning. And the monitoring is not something that take place after the learning. No, during the learning process itself, in the backdrop of his mind, behind his mind, the student will be asking himself whether the strategy I am applying, it is appropriate. Will it help to reach the goal, attain the goal? Is it appropriate? Is it enough? He will be probing into his whether I am giving my energy and focus into the strategy properly. All these questions will be in the backdrop of his mind, and it will be active there. And regulation, whenever the student meet with a problem in learning, there are so many problems that the student meet. Maybe problem may be from external world, internal world, or maybe in the content. Student might not be able to understand the content. There are so many problems they are likely to meet with. Whenever they meet with the problems, they must know how to regulate and control it, and to change their strategies if a particular strategy is not working. And this is a very important juncture, that is reflection and reaction. Student reflect on what they learned. Student asks, he must be able to find out the answer for that question, what they learned. How can they improve next time? Let him articulate answers for this question in words, or ask him to write answers for this question. And when the student gets some answers to this question after reflection, he applies it into the next cycle of learning. So learning goes in learning sessions or learning hours, learning episodes must go in cycles actually. Then only self-regulation can be mastered. So there are some things apart from this framework of self-regulation. I would like to explain that what is needed for a student, certain qualities in their character or their approach, their beliefs, their personality is needed in order to develop along the path of self-regulation in learning actually. What are these? There must be goal directedness should be there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 qualities are there. We must help teachers and parents must be able to help students to pick up these qualities in the personal qualities for the students. That is goal directedness. The students must have that capacity to focus on the goal while they are involved in the learning process, and they must know how to control the emotions, motivations, and there is no scope for explaining these things in detail, and they know how to respond adaptively, and flexibility should be there in their plans and strategies for learning they adopt. And persistence, quality of persisting in the face of difficulty should be there, and they must be able to resist or tune out the distractions that come from within as well as without. They must know how to move away from the things that are likely to distract the process of learning. And attention capacity, attention to failure and environmental factors, they must pay attention to it. Yes, because environment participates in the learning, in which environment the student is sitting for learning. It does a lot to his quality of learning actually. And this monitoring capacity, student must slowly develop this self monitoring capacity. That is, he must know that monitoring is a thing that must happen after the performance, but it must happen during the performance itself. Student must keep asking whether this process I am depending on, is whether it is going to help me to meet the target, or is there any need to change the strategies, and or shortly after the completion. Oh, and this must be a part of integral part of the student, that is self monitoring. You must train him. And self evaluation, teacher must be a secondary evaluator, means student must be encouraged to evaluate himself first. His evaluation about his own learning process is the first thing which is going to be most important when he wants to develop in self regulation. Means he must learn to evaluate his performance, comparing with, not with other people's performance, but to their goals. Make a habit of comparing his performance with the goals he has set for himself. You must be able, teachers must be able to convey this message, and a teacher must keep away from judging himself. And all these qualities, time management qualities, student must pick up. Study environment, he must pay attention to it. Work, temperature, light, noise, and peer, his connection with peer matters a lot. And faculty, and a textbook, note taking, different strategy, classroom attention, all this should be adequate. And self regulation in learning, actually, basically, it consists of three important factors. Student will learn to regulate his learning if he has will, if he has skill for strategic action in order to select proper strategy of learning. He must have adequate skill in it. He must have knowledge about different strategies. There are so many different strategies of learning are there. Memory techniques are there. Retrieval practice, spaced practice, effective strategy, he must be able to select. And he must be able to reflect on this learning. And this part is very important. If you want your student or child to develop in the quality of metacognition and self-regulation, you must understand that if these qualities are not there, it will be very difficult for him to develop this skill of metacognition and self-regulation. That is, he must have genuine interest in learning. Otherwise, he cannot develop this quality. And he must have this belief that any ability, whether it is learning ability, what ability, it develops in an incremental fashion. That is, any ability develops very, very slowly. You must be able to convince the student with the help of the examples. So many examples you will get. So it helps in incremental fashion. And if the student wants to improve his performance, he must have patience. Also, student must have that quality of focusing on his own progress. Never pay attention to others' progress, but he will be dedicated to his progress. And willingness to try challenging tasks. Student must have an affinity or open-mindedness towards challenging situations inside the class. How you can develop, you must be asking, many of you present here, how we can develop it. It is our feedback. For example, a student confronts some challenges, but he fails in it. How others respond, teachers and parents, how they are going to respond, what kind of feedback that we are giving will definitely determine his attitude towards further challenges in his learning life. So it matters. Create an affinity or positive attitude towards the challenges in the mind of the student, and have a culture inside the classroom where errors are celebrated. Encourage students to make errors, because without committing errors, actual learning will not happen. As well as not only in the classroom, but in the home environment also. Parents never criticize errors that students are making in learning. Teachers also, but teachers must focus on repeating whether the student is repeating the other. That must be the focus of teachers. We must develop a culture where errors are celebrated. Actually, it will increase many qualities, creative qualities in the students. These are the facts. And effort, and the student must be able to believe, that is, he must be convinced that effort and effective strategy will lead to success. There are so many students who firmly believe that academic performance or academic skill is the result of inborn capacities or intellectual capacity, which they got hereditary from their father and mother, with the help of by birth they get it. There, so many students think about this. No, students must, you must be able to convince the students with the evidences that effort and effective strategy will lead to success. So these are the strategies actually. Now it is the last session, and I think I have crossed the time limit. Anyway, let us quickly pass on to how to develop. I have some strategies to help you to develop this metacognitive skills and self-regulation capacities of your students. And in this picture, you can see so many questions about the head of this girl. And this is the clue to develop metacognition and self-regulation strategies in your students. Yes, question. Teach them to ask questions about their own learning process. That is the formula for developing learning activities. You must ensure enough space for guidance and exploration. Guidance is something that we teachers and parents give. Do this, do that, do like this, teach, learn like this. These are the guidance. At the same time, student must give freedom or space for exercising his autonomy in order to explore the learning situations. What is the right way of learning? He must be allowed some free spaces. Always there must be a balance between giving guidance and allowing exploration in learning situations. And also in the classroom, there must be enough space and time for reflection, discussion, synthesis about learning process, not about the content to be learned, but regarding the learning activities and learning processes strategies. And students should be able to assess their own learning. This must be developed. The habit of assessing their performance, their process of learning, all that. And there are 4 important ways. First, you must tell the people what is metacognition and model the process in your own work. You can display or you can model that you are practicing metacognition in your activities. Yes, there are ways for it. If you go deep into it, there are many resources to give awareness to teachers. And the second one, teach people about many strategies of learning that they can use. That is, memorizing techniques are there, and there are many effective learning strategies. Rereading is the simplest. Recalling, retrieval practice, spaced practice, XQR method of learning. So many strategies are there. Familiarize the people with so many strategies, effective strategies of learning, different strategies. Help people to learn, regulate their thinking. Yes, regulation of thinking. You must give adequate guidance for it. Show that you value meta in your communication with the people, with the students, with the child. In the case of parents, with the child, you must give them the feeling that you value metacognitive tendencies. For example, this is a method of learning, that is SQ4R method of reading. Yes, okay. All these strategies are involved in it, but applying this strategy, depending on this strategy, will not help to develop self-regulation in learning and metacognition in learning. This a particular strategy of learning. For example, this must be combined with KWL grid. That is, student must ask about K, what I know already before the learning, what I wanted to know, that is what I wanted to learn, what is the goal of learning, what I have learned, L. This probing mentality should be combined with any strategy of learning. Then only there will develop self-regulation in learning. And planning session when the student sits for planning, he must ask, what is the nature of the task, what is my goal, and what kind of information and strategies I need, and ask the student to write the answers for these questions in each learning sessions while he is preparing for a test, or preparing to study a particular content. And during the monitoring questions, that is, do I have clear understanding of what I am doing, clear understanding of what I am doing, and does the task make sense to me? All these questioning questions must be, we must train, we must exhibit how to execute this process, and ask the student, especially to the students who are low in their academic performance, ask them to keep a journal in which they answer these questions every now and then. They will definitely develop. And every students, before the learning, they must ask these questions. Without answering these questions, never allow them to enter into study session. That is, what do you think about the learning topic? What are you going to think about the learning about relativity theory? Is it familiar to you? Is the topic, for example, trigonometry, interesting for you? What is your task? What you are going to achieve from this learning? Do you have any goals related to this week? All these questions must be answered in order to invite the student into the actual process of metacognition and learning process, actual authentic learning process. And after the learning session, student must be answerable that how was the task, how you actively worked, did you achieve the learning goals? He must be answerable to these questions, and it is highly important in order to develop these skills. And this is one of the strategies, that is retrieval practice. You must search in internet a lot of things you can read and practice, and this is a very much effective strategy in order to enhance your learning. That is retrieval practice, spaced practice. This is a science in itself, actually, retrieval practice. And you must probe into it. And if you wanted to know more about it, please contact me. I will explain what is it. It is a good strategy. That is spaced. Student is practicing his brain to retrieve the things that he has learned from his brain. And there is some discipline involved in this retrieval practice. And you must familiarize the students for it. And this is a significant factor. This is an indispensable if you wanted to develop self-regulation and metacognition in your students. This is for teachers, exclusively for teachers, because what happens in a classroom after each examination? There is half-yearly examination, there is quarterly examination, test papers are going on inside the classroom. Actually, what is happening after when the teacher gives scores or grades to the students? Teacher, with the help of that scores or the scores or grades student, the teacher just judge the student. Judgment, often most teachers are judgmental. That is, you have learned well, congratulations, good. You have not learned, you were lazy, you have not learned properly. You categorize the students. But the act of building the self-regulation skills asks the teaching world to practice this exam wrappers, that is along with the grade. You help the students, invite the student into the classroom, let them sit there and ask these questions. Describe how you prepared for the examination. Let them answer these questions. Ask them to write down how they prepared for the test paper or examination. What were their learning strategies? And the next question is, what they expected to happen in the examination? How much was your expected score in the examination? And how much they got in the examination? And for the next examination, how they are going to prepare, what all changes in their learning habits and learning process they are going to make. And this exam wrappers section must go on, must be a part of learning, or that is a school learning activities after each examination or even a test paper. So this is a best strategy to develop metacognition and reflection and self-regulation skills in the student. That is, student learns to assess or reflect about the appropriateness of his learning strategies or learning methods. And also never reward the ability of the student. When a student come with good marks, never say congratulate. Never congratulate him saying that you are an intellectual student, or you have some ability. I appreciate it. Congratulations. Never say that. Science say that you just reward or praise the effort. Your words or your feedback or your response to a student who come out successfully should be like this. That is good. I appreciate that you have invested your time and energy. You have worked hard. You must have followed a disciplined learning process in order to reach here. So keep it up, that working mentality. This must be the kind of the reward or praise that we must give the student. And otherwise, he will not get interested in the process of learning, or he will not get interested in the adequate effort and energy that he has to invest in the process of learning. And encourage self comparison and model power. Be explicit, spend time discussing with the student, and encourage questioning and help seeking. Student must feel that freedom to seek help. It is important in order to develop self-regulation. Encourage goal setting, not only goal setting, and give him guidance to focus his mind on the goals. Be explicit, because 21st century, in 21st century, what we expect from the student is not only a chunk of information or knowledge. In the job market, the recruiters are looking for these qualities in a student: creative ability, critical thinking, and communication. And all these abilities are possible only when the person who enter into workforce or job is able to follow lifelong learning. That is, he has to constantly update himself, because changes taking place in in the era of technology is so rapid, and it is not easy to keep up with the changes. So he must be lifelong learning, must be an integral part of his living, actually. Then only, otherwise he will be thrown out, most of the working people. So self-regulate, only those people who know how to regulate their learning activities will flourish in this 21st century. And this is the actual method for teaching your child in metacognition and self-regulation. And I think I need not explain it. This is when I say this is the actual way of teaching self-regulation. Or it is autobiographical perspective. That is, student learns himself the lessons of this metacognition and self-regulation. There must be skill and well. Learning is autobiographical. It is known to student how this learning, known to the student how this learning about swimming take place. It is only known to him only. And teachers are the key role. Only if the teachers come forward we can implement this self-regulation and metacognition in learning. And it is sad fact that most of the teaching community, most of the persons in the teaching communities are even aware of these strategies of self-regulation and metacognition in learning. And they are not simply aware of these things. That is recently invented useful learning strategies and techniques. They are not aware. These strategies are actually research based, evidence based strategies are these. And you can see in Western countries, almost all schools have started practicing or implementing retrieval practice, metacognition, and self regulation principles, and also social emotional learning principle. They are into it already. But I will say most of schools in our country is still on the traditional path. We must agree. We are still depending upon rote learning, actually. And we have to change if we want to keep pace with the modern world that we are going through in. So, educators who wish for active learners in their classes must know that these are the qualities of an active learner. They will have prior knowledge about which strategy, knowledge about self, and ability to manage this knowledge. So, why this is not being implemented in our school system is one of the reason is definitely it is a complex construct. Only if the teaching community realize aspects of these things, we can implement it. First, they must learn these things. And it is often poorly understood by teachers. It is also a fact. It will take time for the teachers to grasp these things. And why it is important? Because so many research outcomes are there, empirical research evidences are there that this strategy of metacognition and self-regulation in learning can definitely bring forth changes in the academic performance of your students, of your child. There are evidences. That is why this is important. And one of meta-analysis is this, and this is a very famous study. I don't know how many teachers are aware of this. And thinking while studying, this is the crux of this self-regulation and metacognition. And these are the list of the questions. And if you want to know about in details, please approach me. I will teach you about the questioning in order to develop these skills. And this is the final word, that is successful people ask better questions. And as a result, they get better answers about their learning process, I will say, in this context. And thank you so much. I think you have benefited.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this informative session. Thank you so much, ma'am. Your presentation was very effective, I must say. Yeah, in this session, we have learned about the process of learning and exactly the role of
Yes,
metacognition
yes.
and self regulation. Yes. And ma'am, we have few
Definitely.
questions
You can
also
ask.
over it. Yeah, ma'am, Mathili ma'am wants to know that at what age the teachers can develop these skills to students, like
Yes.
development
It's
of
a question what I
metacognition and
expected from the
self-regulation.
audience actually. Actually, teachers can all on a sudden cannot develop these skills. From the lower classes itself, the attempt for developing this metacognition and self-regulation must begin. That is, teachers of lower classes must take initiative, and at least 2 or 3 years will take in order to fully grasp the what is behind this. When the student is very small, or in second standard, third standard, he will reach at least sixth standard. He must reach sixth or seventh standard in order to integrate the concepts and theories or facts regarding this metacognition and self-regulation into his learning personality. So it is not that it must begin in the childhood, but if you start teaching these skills in the +2 level also, even in the college level also, it will make a great difference actually. It will take time if the child is of a younger age, but constant follow up is needed. That is the point. So entire teaching community must be aware of it. That is the point. Okay.
So, is there any other question, Garima ma'am?
Ma'am, sir, I think that there is no other question. Ma'am, PPT is already so much explained that participants have already cleared their doubt.
Because I am not satisfied because regarding many points I want to speak a lot because I was just mentioning many points. I ask the audience to go deep into the factors I gave here. That is things I gave. There are so many literatures. Literature is available online as well as offline. You can depend on this. Yes.
Yes,
So there
ma'am,
are
and
a lot of comments.
yes,
Pardon?
ma'am, there are a lot of comments and positive feedbacks for you.
Thank you.
You can see the flashes on the screen
Yes,
about
yes, sir.
feedbacks. There
Mhm.
are a lot.
And if anyone has any question, then please you can post your question in the chat box.
Thank you,
Yes.
all the participants for participating and for giving us the day, which is Sunday.
Yeah.
As one of the participants said earlier that the Sunday is the rest day, but still, the learning should never stop, and the show must go on,
Yes.
and the show must not stop.
Yes. When the school reopens, you must take these lessons with you,
Yeah,
whether you are going to
definitely.
college or a school. Teachers, parents, and students as well take this
Definitely.
Yes, ma'am. This
information.
session is helpful for everyone, whether they are teachers, parents, and students, or maybe college-going students. It is going to be helpful for everyone.
Yes, yes.
So, with this, we will conclude the session.
Okay.
I thank
Thank you.
you, ma'am, for such a wonderful session, such a awesome presentation. Basically, the presentation was totally satisfying and full of information, full of knowledgeable information. It was, and we learned a lot. Even I learned a lot from it, and I hope
Yes.
the audience also learned a lot. And if they have any questions, you can post down your questions, and if not, you can post down the questions in our comment section later on in the video. We will definitely answer that. And with this, we will conclude the session. If you have not subscribed the channel, so you can subscribe the channel for future updates. Basically, this is mental health awareness series by PsyCoolG Connect, an initiative by PsyCoolG Wellness Private Limited, an ISO certified registered organization. So you can opt for subscribing the channel. If you are an enthusiastic learner, basically, again the learning came here. The word learning came again. And at the last, I would like to conclude with a big thanks to Ma'am Dr. Jenny for being there, for giving us time, for sparing the time and giving us so much knowledgeable information. Okay, so I
Okay.
think all the comments are being visible on the screen. Thank
Yes.
you for all the lovely comments. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. If you have not subscribed the channel, you can subscribe the channel, follow us on Facebook, and do uh, see the description box for all the available links. Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
will
Thank you,
see,
ma'am.
yeah, we will see you all in our next webinar.